I'd like to turn it over to Professor James Basker, who is our collaborator and partner on Oxford Academia programs. And he will also be joined today by Haitong Du, who is one of our esteemed teaching faculty on Oxford Academia. And I'll just tell you a little bit about Jim before I turn it over to him. So Professor Basker has taught at Harvard, Cambridge, and is a professor of history at Barnard and Columbia. He's also the president of the Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History in New York. He completed his doctorate at Oxford on a Rhodes Scholarship and serves on the Rhodes Scholar Board of Directors. And he has directed and taught summer programs for high school students at Oxford for over 30 years. So without further ado, I'll now turn it over to Jim and Haitong.
Becca, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I'm going to say a little more about myself and how I come to this program, and then ask my colleague and friend Haitong Du to introduce himself. I've been an educator all of my career. I'm originally from a small town in Oregon. I was a scholarship boy to Harvard College and to Cambridge University, and then, as Becca mentioned, as a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford. So I've been among the luckiest of the lucky. Um, so early in my teaching career, I began leading summer programs, academic programs for high school students at Oxford. And it's been my joy to do that for many, many years since. Oxford Academia is a wonderful program in a magical place. And I'm going to say more about it in just a minute, but I want to point out one of the key strengths of our program is the quality of our teaching faculty. And to illustrate that fact, I'm going to ask Haitong Du to tell his life story, both as a student of the program and then where you are now in your academic career. Haitong.
Well, thank you very much for the kind introduction, as always, Jim. I should mention that about how many years now? 9 years ago, I was in Jim's program, and that's when I came to Oxford for the first time as a rising senior in high school. And fast forward, I did my undergrad for 4 years in exactly the same subject, came back to Oxford as a visiting student in my junior year. So I study abroad in Oxford, and I liked it so much that I stayed here for a 2 year master's. And after the 2 year master's, I stayed for the doctorate. And I'm currently a second year student in international relations, the same subject I've been studying for, well, 9 years really. On the doctorate. So that's very briefly my life story. And I've also lived in, well, I would say 3 different continents.
So Haitong, it's great. And one of the things you represent to me is the not just the academic excellence and the passion for teaching, but also the international background. You bring so many strands in your own intellect and your own experience, originally from China, educated partly in the United States, largely in the UK at Oxford University, and now teaching at Christchurch. What I'd love to do is say a bit about the program and then turn to that beautiful image you have behind you of Oxford. But for the people who are hearing about the program for the first time, we have a residential program at Oxford in University College and Corpus Christi College, two of the most historic and oldest colleges in Oxford, each with tremendous history. And our students, who come from all across the United States and many foreign countries, come with the intention of majoring in one subject and minoring in a second. And they have a huge choice of subjects, from medicine and engineering or AI to humanities like literature and history, creative writing, a huge array of subjects, and students can combine any two that they would like to do. But to give you a taste of one of those subjects, Haitong has been specializing in international relations, and of course his own background is perfect for that subject, as is Oxford. So Haitong, would you say a little bit about how the course is structured that you do and how it really is active learning that the students participate in?
So one way Oxford teaches its own undergraduate students, and as a tutor, the way we do it is through what's called the tutorial system. And it's when one tutor simultaneously teaches 1, 2, or 3 students. And students come to class with something prepared, usually a written essay, and then the tutor basically grills the student on everything they have written. Now, we are not going to do that to a bunch of high school students, having them write something in advance, come to class, and then get grilled, but rather the sort of Socratic learning is something I have been for the past 2 years, well, three years at this point, trying to preserve in my classrooms. Active learning, as Jim talked about, is not one person lecturing at the lecture theater and then have a whole bunch of students taking notes. And then going back home, feed it to ChatGPT, and then have something turned out by artificial intelligence. But rather, it's about exploring the world together. And one thing I do is when I come to the classroom, I tell students that I actually don't know too much about the world because the world is way too complex and there are way too many historical factual information you could derive, and the resources you have is almost endless. But rather is a subject to teach students how to explore the world, how to understand the world. One thing international relations scholars ask all the time, for example, is why states fight wars. And in my classroom, I try to encourage the students to think, uh, when we talk about wars, what kind of wars are we talking about? Are wars being fought over security? Are wars being fought over questions of honor and prestige? Are wars being fought because one particular political actor wants to project strength on the international stage, right? Are these the reasons why wars are fought in the past? And is this the way wars will still be fought in the future? So it's really the studying of, well, everything in the world, but across state boundaries in a international, in a big way, really. So that's what I really liked about international relations. And that's also why I think students today need to study international relations, not just to sort of understand the past and make sense of the future, but rather just to survive in an increasingly dangerous and turbulent world. Now, that said, my colleagues also teach a vast number of subjects, which I think are absolutely fascinating. AI, I know very little about AI. And I believe there's also a course on history, and there's also a course on specifically the history of war. And of course, there are subjects on, as Jim talked about, medicine. There are subjects related to engineering that I wish I could have taken. Well, if I were 10 years younger. But that said, of course, we steal each other's lesson plans at the end of the class. I go to, for example, Predrag, who's our doctor who teaches medical. I believe he teaches medicine. I go to him and say, Predrag, would you please share a few things from your class with me because I would love to learn. And we do the same thing to each other.
Hi, Tom. One of the things that you, like all the other teachers in the program, bring is not just academic mastery and excellence, but a passion for your subject and I think a love of teaching. Would you say a little bit about the kinds of students from your point of view you've had the last couple of years, and then some of the things you take them outside the classroom to experience while they're in Oxford, which is such a magical place, as we can see from the photo in back of you. But say a little about the kids and then some of the things you do with them.
I mean, to be fair, the photo's taken from a particularly sunny day, which I would say in England happens probably about 75% of the time, if not lower. That said, I would say the students in my class, I mean, it's hard to overgeneralize all of them, but a absolute majority of my students are intellectually motivated. Imagine choosing to spend your summer when you could have been doing anything in the world instead in a classroom and learn, right? Now, that might not sound particularly liberating to someone who wants to explore the world, but Oxford is the perfect classroom to explore many facets of the world, right? I believe, if I'm, where am I looking at? That building over there, for example, that's the Clarendon Press. Or the Oxford University Press. And I believe since the 1870s, under a secretary named Bartholomew Price, has been publishing comprehensive manuals about the entire world, gathering all the knowledge possibly imagined from the entire world together in this place. I believe a little bit further down that way. Probably that way. Probably that way. Is the Colonial India Institute, and that's where the Indian civil servant examinations were being prescribed in the British Raj. So if we're thinking about the production and the dissemination of knowledge and who gets to tell people what value, what knowledge are deemed valuable, I think Oxford is the sort of perfect place, right? And I don't want to just describe Oxford in this, pomps and circumstance with nothing going on, with nothing wrong going on. Of course, it's also a place where a lot of historical injustices can still be seen and be witnessed. And I think that teaches the students not just to understand the world, but understand the world in a complex and nuanced way. So when we talk about realism, we'll go to Hartford College, where Thomas Hobbes, one of the most famous writers in political philosophy, wrote The Leviathan, and he described the world in this rather gloomy way, and he described individuals as the life of men, solitary, brutish, nasty, poor, and short, where individuals in this what he calls the state of nature are in a constant state of warfare against one another. Or at Christchurch, as Jim talked about, that's where John Locke wrote, and John Locke was a very different kind of Enlightenment era thinker who argued that life, liberty, and property were three inalienable rights. And he believed in this, and he quite genuinely believed the feasibility of a liberal democratic form of government, which would then bring in a era that's much more peaceful than what Hobbes imagined. So I
Hi,
think
Tom.
just wandering through the buildings, right, that's a magical experience. But
Hi,
also
Tom.
know
You've
what
opened
happened
up
in these buildings for hundreds of years.
exactly. You've opened up a wonderful theme for us, and if you stay centered in the photo where you are right now, you've got us looking at particular buildings, but over your right shoulder, if you don't move, is the edge of the Bodleian Library from 1603, arguably the greatest library in the world. With a little cupola at the top by your right shoulder, down at the bottom, is the Sheldonian Theater, which was built in 1663 for degree ceremonies and matriculation. And then, if you stay still, Haitong, I'll direct people over your left shoulder in the far upper right corner are Christchurch Meadows, which, believe it or not, in the center of this wonderful city, there are grazing fields that have been there since the monastic house, St. Bridesweids, owned them. And they are today Christchurch Meadows, open to the public. It's a beautiful place for nature walks and for morning jogs and for classes to go and discuss poetry or write short stories. You can also see a steeple just next to Haitong's left ear, and that is University Church, which is the oldest church in Oxford. It's the church where, until the 1660s, all the official ceremonies took place. So the point I'm making with that little gloss, which Haitong has helped on, is that that Oxford is itself a major sort of living textbook. It is a living historical fabric where every single building, every street, every stone speaks of history, but also speaks of today's reality, that Oxford brings together 30,000 people from all over the world to do much what we're doing in the summer. We're bringing students from all over the United States and other parts of the world because they're interested in learning more. They're interested in doing subjects they can't do in high school. They're interested in doing subjects at another level where they're with a great scholar like Haitong or some of our other colleagues. Students are able not only to see these subjects in new ways, but also to get a sense for themselves that they can function at a high level of intellectual and academic conversation, gain confidence for their plans for college and beyond, and also connect with students who share their passions, share their interests and appetites to do things. So, Haitong, I know you're teaching at Christchurch, my old college, as well. I know that you'll take a group of students there, but what would you show them at Christchurch? Because it has quite a history.
Wow, at Christchurch, I would say I probably have to show them the no peel door that's outside of the Christchurch. I mean, you have the Great Hall, and then you have the staircase. The staircase, I believe, is where they filmed one scene in Harry Potter, and that's where all the tourists flock to. But then, at least the last summer, I showed the students the no peel door, and Peel refers to Prime Minister Robert Peel, who I believe in the 1860s was a leading conservative prime minister who sided with the Liberal Party to, he basically did two things that were unacceptable to an average supporter of the Conservative Party of the time. He abolished the Corn Laws, which allowed Britain to take a step forward towards free trade, which was something the Liberal Party advocated for. And he also advocated for, I believe, Catholic emancipation, which to the students at Christchurch, who were mostly, let's say, descendants of landed gentries of the time, and many of them still are, was unacceptable. They believe that only someone who's a good Anglican, but also in many ways fit the profiles of a wealthy white English gentleman could attend a university such as Oxford. Now, arguably, Oxford has changed quite a lot, but the angry students, which was basically a mob at that point, nailed the slogan "No Peel," so oppose Robert Peel, onto the door so that they would be remembered forever for their, let's say, political advocacy, which I thought is quite interesting. It tells you that the university has always been connected to political activities of the age. So yeah, that's what I
So
was showing.
true.
Amongst
Well,
many
and
other things, of course, Jim.
yeah. Last summer, I took a group of students, and this is part of what all the students experience. I should say this because students have a major seminar and they have a minor seminar, which can be any other subject. You could do Haitong's international relations. You could do then medicine as your minor or creative writing. Every student has a uniquely customized curriculum for their two interests. But apart from those, there are a range of guest speakers, there are a range of field trips and walking tours and opportunities to see into other disciplines and to hear from other talents, as well as to explore the institutions, the physical fabric that makes up that beautiful medieval city that you see behind Haitong. If I took students, as I did last summer, to Christchurch, I'd take them to the upper library and show them in that beautiful 1700s library some of the artifacts that tell the story of Cardinal Wolsey, who founded the college in 1525, in a gesture that really speaks to the Renaissance coming into the modern world. Wolsey was a cardinal in the Church of England, a major advisor to Henry VIII, very powerful man, and an Oxford graduate. He'd been at Magdalen College himself. He decided that his legacy was going to be the greatest college ever at Oxford. So using his power as an official in the church, he confiscated something like 20 monasteries all over the country in order to fund this large college, Christchurch, which would have a larger number.
College.
Yes, then as Cardinals College, and then Henry VIII refounded it as Christchurch. But it would then have the largest number of teaching fellows called students of any college in Oxford. So there you have it in miniature. Wolsey sort of canceling the medieval tradition of monasteries, worshiping for the salvation of souls or whatever in different remote parts of England, taking that wealth and property and turning it into an educational institution, which would be more forward-looking and would develop minds and ideas and would lead to Haitong Du teaching international relations to the students there now. It's really a wonderful experience for the students in Oxford. And I want to say a word, Haitong, about their residential circumstances, because our students live right in two of the most historic colleges, University College, which is the oldest college in Oxford, founded in the 1200s, and Corpus Christi College.
A very disputed claim, Jim. A very disputed claim.
Oh, I know the Balliol men like you sometimes dispute it, and so do the Merton College people. Corpus Christi College was founded 300 years later, just before Christchurch, its neighbor. And Corpus Christi was quite famous in the beginning, not only for bringing Greek and mathematics into the Oxford curriculum, but almost a century later for being a center where the King James Bible was assembled with a team of scholars from all over the country, but experts in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin who did the translation known as the King James Bible in the early 1600s. So as we mentioned, every one of these institutions has a lot of history and intellectual significance. Our students live in rooms that undergraduates live in during the year. They take their meals in medieval dining halls. They have the run of the grounds. They can meet with their friends and hang out in the quadrangles. Sometimes the classes, seminars will meet outdoors if it's a sunny day, do some of their exercises there. And there's a residential staff that looks after the students to make sure everyone's healthy and has the support they need to be, at optimum strength. So there are guidelines for students in residence. There's a curfew every evening, and the residential staff has every student check in, and then again does a sort of bedroom check between 10:30 and 11, so that everyone's safe and sound every night. That staff is on duty 24 hours a day, and they're available to the students in the program office, so that if there are any questions or problems at any time of the day, they can go there. Or they can go there just to connect with other students, meet some of the teachers, find out what the activities are, sign up for tickets to go to a play, or that sort of thing. Now, Haitong, I know you're very active. You go above and beyond what many teachers might in terms of joining with the students in their trips to plays and so on. What were some of the things you've enjoyed the last couple of years as extracurricular outings with the students?
Wow. So, my favorite extracurriculars are always going to be in Oxford, in part because Jim laid a curse on me 9 years ago to convince me that this is probably the only lifestyle I'll ever need. And ever since I left Jim's program, I've been working my ways to come back, and it's been serving me quite well so far. But outside of Oxford, Stratford-upon-Avon, we went to see Shakespeare. I believe Shakespeare's birthplace, but also Shakespeare's plays. I believe those were very good. We went to Blenheim Palace. That was it's not necessarily a chateau, but it's a medieval. No, it's not medieval. It's a neoclassical palace in Woodstock, just north of Oxford, and it was gifted to the Duke of Marlborough, John Churchill, after the Battle of, I believe, the Battle of Blenheim, but I don't speak German. The palace is called Blenheim Palace, and it was transformed from a royal hunting lodge to become the only palace in Britain that's technically not owned by royalty. So, it's also where Sir Winston Churchill was born, because the Churchill family would indeed be the Marlborough family, Spencer Churchill family. I take my students on a day trip to go to London. I'm still deciding which one I'm doing for each group. But if you come to my honor seminar, which is 4 weeks long, we'll go to both. One of them is a trip to the British Museum and the National Gallery to see, well, some people would say to see the exploits of the British Empire. But I would also say it's not just to go to the museum to see the artifacts, but to go to the museum to see how 19th century Victorians presented the artifacts, how they framed these imperial acquisitions. Were they seen as loot and plunder, or was that being seen as some sort of, symbols of British glory? Another day trip we take is to go to the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, the heart of British naval power that really became the defining feature of British strength in the 19th century. The Royal Observatory is where I believe the Meridian Line passes through, which basically gives us the baseline of every clock you can find everywhere in the world today. And the question I ask the students is, what made the world that can't even agree upon the color of an orange come together and decide that a universal coordinated time was needed? And that's the birth of the modern world we're talking about. I mean, in part, we are still benefiting or living in the shadows of the British Empire. And I think Oxford being the center of all sorts of intellectual activities and being so close to the cultural heritage we're thinking about, Shakespeare, um, the outcomes of borders and international uh, settlements of disputes, Blenheim Palace, and of course, museums and time, two of the most important things that we still consider as high culture. So,
Hi, Tom. That's so beautifully put. And of course, you and I both have an orientation towards these historical institutions, historical and cultural developments. But I should take a minute to editorialize about the forward-looking and modern STEM courses that are in our curriculum, because students can come on our program and study actually with a professor of medicine from St. Andrew's Medical School in Scotland. Our colleague Pedrag has been teaching for 12 years or more, do a course in medicine. They can do a course in law, which is oriented around the practice of law, the nature of law, but helps students to understand that as a possible career. But then subjects in like engineering, where students get a glimpse of the future, and AI as applied to across the spectrum.
don't know what that is.
Yeah, so that our students can be coming as students to Oxford do come today to be forward looking and looking at subjects that are going to shape the future of the world, as well as some of the institutions and artifacts and scholarly knowledge that represents the shape of the world in the past. You mentioned the honors version of the program, Haitong. I'm glad you did bring that up, because this year, for the first time, because of popular demand, for students who wish to spend 4 weeks in their subject, there's an honors version of their program where they would do 2 weeks in a seminar led by Haitong or Predrag or Michaela, one of the others, and then 2 weeks of intensive research to produce a final project under the supervision of our faculty, the so-called honors version that we're launching for the first time. We have students enrolled already, and I'm really excited to see that rolled out. Even if students are not doing the 4 week, doing one of the 2 week sessions, I'll be there giving some lectures and walking tours. I do a series of evening talks. I think last year we started calling them curfew breakers, where students would come the last hour before curfew. And we do a workshop around poetry written about Oxford, some of it by famous poets like Wordsworth and Matthew Arnold, and others less well known, but people who have found the magic of Oxford someplace that sort of came alive for them in verse. I do some other workshops around literature and history and the way it touches the modern world, which are open to any of the students who want to come. And I even give some informal conversations about applying to universities. I have taught at Harvard and Barnard and Columbia. I've advised students for decades about the best way to present themselves and the best strategies to pursue in thinking about college. And this is an excellent environment in which to have those informal discussions because there's no pressure. This is not a session with a guidance counselor at school. It's not an admissions interview. It's really just a chat session with other kids who have the same ambitions and the same concerns and questions. So it's a real opportunity to be thinking in an idealistic way. What are the subjects I care about? What am I passionate about in my creative or intellectual life? And then what are my practical plans for applying to college? And what are the best places for me to develop my academic interests? Haitong, you mentioned that you did your junior year abroad at Oxford. Say a word what that was like, because it's one of the ways that our former students come to Oxford in large numbers every year. Tell us a little about that in your life.
So I came to Oxford for 3 terms as a visiting student. Oxford has trimesters. Each trimester is named after a saint. Um, we have Michaelmas term, named after Saint Michael. We have Hilary term, named after, I believe, Saint Hilary of Poitiers, which not a lot of people know about. And we have Trinity term, celebrating the feast of the Holy Trinity. Again, you do not have to be a communicated member of the Anglican Church to be a matriculated student at the University of Oxford. That rule was scrapped about 120 years ago. That said, I came here for 3 terms, studying the politics part of the PPE course. So Oxford's sort of flagship undergraduate degree is called PPE, Philosophy, Politics, and Economics. I wasn't remotely interested in philosophy or economics. I just studied politics, and I took 6 tutorials across 3 terms. So each term there were 2 tutorials, and they were in a wide range of subjects: Chinese politics, U.S. politics, international relations of the 2 world wars, international relations of the Cold War, et cetera, et cetera. And I believe that sort of intense training of an Oxford undergraduate really shaped me into who I am today. Uh, Over the course of 1 year, or really 3 times 8, or is it 36 weeks? Is it 36 weeks? No,
24.
24 weeks. Sorry.
We're going to put you in the math course next.
Over the course of 24 weeks, I wrote 48 essays. Each essay was 2,000 words long. Admittedly, most of them, a majority of them, were not very good, but it really trained me into thinking in a complex way, always being ready to defend my arguments. And I think that's the miniature version the students are getting. So students are getting a sort of miniature version of that, learning how to defend your argument, even amidst pushbacks. But then the training of an undergraduate student is really, when you encounter a complex question, how are you going to give a well-educated and nuanced answer, drawing from the available evidence, but also being able to stand your ground without being arrogant. And I think that's a delicate balance that I learn and am still learning.
Haitong, I've always enjoyed talking with you about that experience. And I know that the work you did that your junior year abroad in Oxford, you were based at Pembroke College, very proudly. I know that all that was folded back into credits at Tufts University, where you finished your bachelor's degree. And I think in a practical way, it probably helped you to gain admission to Oxford as a graduate student, where you have been a star. But I think you touched on something there in the way you explained the approach to complex ideas and your transformative experience in Oxford. And I think that's what I, as an educator, am hoping for these students in their immersion in Oxford. It's a lot more than an interesting way to spend a period of your vacation. It's a lot more than just coming abroad and, seeing tourist sites and learning some history. It's really about human development. It's about being presented with scholars in all these different disciplines who are working at a level at the frontiers of knowledge, who are thinking about subjects in new and original ways. It's being around students who have the same ambition or aspiration. And I really think that the students who come away from 2 weeks or 4 weeks in our program have a transformed sense, not only of themselves, of their ability to work at this level in university, but also of the possibilities there are, of the opportunities, that these are subjects that are not in the high school curriculum. And they find, I love this subject, that it might be international relations, it might be war and world history, it might be engineering of an off the charts variety. But that's what happens when I talk with former students over and over again, and I see them over and over again at Columbia, Harvard, and Princeton, and Stanford, and other places. They have a transformative experience in their time in Oxford. That's partly about the magic of the place. It's partly about interacting with a quality of people, which I just find unique and transcendent. It's what brings me back every year, as I have done for most of the last 40 years, because I love working with the scholars of today and of the future, like yourself and so many of your colleagues, Haitong, and then getting to be with the high school kids whose excitement and whose development I can feel all around me as I talk with them in response to the experience they have in Oxford. One of the last things I want us to touch on, Haitong, is that we don't expect students to come with any particular background in the subject. Most of the subjects like yours, students can't do in high school. So what are the attitudes that they need to bring to succeed in your class?
I mean, I can only speak for my own class, right? If you have no interest in engineering, don't study engineering, right? If you have no interest in world affairs, don't come to international relations, right? But if you are eventually shoved into my classroom against your will, then I shall do my best to entertain you. Again,
That won't help.
I am not going to teach international relations like a high school history class where you have to sit on your chair and just memorize a bunch of dates, right? When did World War I start? Oh, 1914. When did it end? 1918. What about the Paris Peace Conference, 1919 to 1920? Right? That's boring. That's not the way we learn, right? Rather, we are dealing with a lot of information that's readily available, right? We know states fight wars. We know that even today, states either fight wars or they threaten to fight wars. But have you ever wondered why these wars were started in the first place, right? And the short answer is we still don't know, right? We're still debating. Why does a certain national leader want to acquire a large chunk of new territory, right? Is it because of economic values in that particular territory? Or is it because of prestige? Because having a large section on the map colored, well, in the color of your own flag is particularly rewarding to that political leader, which he or she can then leverage domestically to cement his, uh, well, legitimacy. Right? I think these are all open-ended questions. And I'm not going to spend 2 weeks or 4 weeks indoctrinating the students into believing in a certain version of the world that I believe in. And as a matter of fact, I don't think I have that many beliefs, right? But rather, it's about breaking down the sort of established beliefs people have about the world. Because in Oxford, we're really encouraged to challenge everything, right? Even the sort of established dogmas that high school teachers will say are not supposed to be broken. Again, going back to the history of the British Empire, not to be like a broken recorder, but if people all had been taught their entire lives that empires are bad and colonial exploitations are bad, and states are not supposed to go to another state and tell people what to do there, then what are the alternatives? Is it nation states? Is it states organized around the principles of language, along the principles of a shared history, along the principles of a shared race or one racial identity? Right? That brings a lot of open-ended questions. Again, I am not defending empires, certainly not colonial exploitative empires such as the British Empire, but I think wandering in the streets of Oxford really brings a lot of questions, right? If the empire was so bad, then what are the potential solutions to deal with the problems of empires? And if problems of the world today largely arises from ultranationalism of various kinds, then what are some alternatives that we could potentially derive from the historical past to solve many problems arising from ultranationalism today, right? I think these are open-ended questions that we're going to discuss in the classroom. We'll
Hi,
also
Tom.
discuss, we'll also discuss, for example, the efficacy of international law. Is it useful? Is it helpful? And of course, measures to prevent wars. If wars are so bad and so catastrophic, then why are states still fighting them? Is it because nothing can genuinely be done? I think these are all interesting questions for the student to explore. And of course, you don't need to know when World War I was fought in order
Hi,
to
Tom.
succeed in the classroom.
I can see your students going away with a whole new way of thinking about international relations historically and in the future. I imagine some of your students will wind up as professors themselves, or working in think tanks, or working in foreign policy in the State Department, or any number of wonderful roles for them. I think we're drawing to the end of our time together. And I think Becca may pop back on to say a word about students wanting to apply to the program or get answers to their questions. But I just want to say, first of all, thank you, Haitong, for taking your time while you're working so hard at Oxford to join in this conversation and answer questions. I want to say to everybody listening that I'll be in person in Oxford in the summer. Looking forward to meeting people. Often parents come to drop off or to pick up their student, and I'm always pleased to meet those parents and offer sometimes a pretty interesting little walking tour of Oxford and some of its historic highlights. I think Becca's been on some of those herself. But Becca, would you close the show by telling people more about how to apply and how to be in touch with your office?
Yes. Yes, and thank you both so much. That was terrific. Yes, so the application is completed entirely online. So you just go to the website, click apply, you will create a login, and then this login will become what we refer to as the digital locker, which is kind of your online portal, which is your one-stop shop from starting your application to where you will find all the necessary information and forms and documents needed to prepare for the program. But when you apply, we'll ask for your basic information, your name, current grade, contact information, so that we know how to get in touch with you. And then the most important step is to select your program and your seminar choice and to secure a space with a signed agreement form and a $700 payment, which consists of a $200 application fee and a $500 tuition deposit. And then once that space is secured, the rest of the application will open up and families can complete that when you have time. And that consists of a personal statement, which is a short statement that students complete that tells us a bit about who you are, why you want to go on this program. I always tell students it's great if you can talk a bit about why you want this particular seminar because the teachers will later read those and it really helps them prepare and learn more about their students. And then we also ask for 2 teacher reference forms. And for that, you list the teacher's contact information and their names, and we send them a reference form directly. So we track those down for you because teachers are very busy. And then they complete those online. We do have a rolling admissions process and we will accept applications as long as space permits. I will say though that these programs fill up pretty quickly and especially the seminars fill up quickly because we deliberately keep those small. So if you have seminars that you really have your heart set on, just complete that first step and hold space in those as soon as you can so that you don't lose out on that space. And of course, if you have any questions, you can call us at our office anytime. Our phone number is on our website and in our emails. We love to talk to families, not only to guide them through the admissions process, but also to help them find the perfect program for them and also the perfect seminar. And we can provide a lot more information.
Well, I'll just say that I hope to see everybody in person in Oxford this summer. And Haitong, I know I'm going to see you sometime in the spring, but definitely in July in Oxford. And I'm really looking forward to that.
Well, I will just add that I greatly look forward to exploring the world together with you.
And thank you all
Thank
for
you.
joining.